PC gaming cannot be stopped. How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Deck Ready, the channel all about the Steam Deck. This is my weekly news update for the greatest handheld in the world. We've got some great news stories to talk about, and I also finally got my hands on the Jsaux dock that allows you to install an NVMe drive into it and use that as sort of external storage for the Steam Deck, which is pretty cool. But first off, we got to talk about how big Steam actually is, because I never really comprehended this until I saw the news story this morning that it just beat its own record for having its peak concurrent users at one time at a number of 30 million people. Yes, 30 million people were using Steam at the exact same time. For context, there have been about 24 million PS5 sold at this point, and this is what we're talking about with Steam, 30 million people using Steam at once. That's not how many Steam accounts there are, or I guess PC sales out there in the world. I don't really know how you'd even quantify that. But if you're looking at the PS5 with 24 million of them sold, I would guess that they're nowhere near 24 million PS5s being on at the same time. As for the top 5 games that helped Steam beat its own record for the second time this year, we have some usual suspects and some surprises. The first one to me personally is a surprise. It's Counter-Strike Global Offensive, because this is a game that I just never see anyone talking about, and I would guess that's because I'm on Twitter, right? And like Twitter kind of gives you news that you care about, and I don't search up Counter-Strike Global Offensive all that much. But yeah, this game is consistently in the top 5 most played games on Steam, so it's never really gonna go away. And honestly, I'm kind of curious to check it out because I'd love to know what makes it so popular. The second place game, definitely not gonna surprise anyone, it's Dota 2. This is Valve's competitor to League of Legends, and it's consistently in the top 5 most played games on Steam. This is a game I have a little bit of experience with, and I'm just gonna be real, it's not for me, but I know obviously there's a ton of people who like it because it's always in the top 5 most played games on Steam. Next up, we have a game that's new to the United States, but has been a powerhouse ever since it came out. That game is Lost Ark. I feel like this one has struck a balance with people where it's free to play and you can definitely spend a ton of money on it, but what you're able to do for free makes it actually a viable option. And when you contrast it against a game like Diablo Immortal, which is just the exact opposite of everything I just said, it's kind of easy to see why this game has climbed the charts of Steam and stayed firmly planted there in the top 5 for months now. And next up, you have Apex Legends and PUBG. Apex Legends is growing and growing constantly. People are really excited about that game. It kind of makes sense because we're in a lull period with Warzone 2 like on the horizon right now. People are obviously looking over towards Apex Legends, and that game is getting new content all the time, with its newest update coming soon allegedly being maps from Titanfall 2 that are going to be added to a competitive mode in the game. I can definitely see why that game is so high on the list. Also, it runs incredibly on the Steam Deck. I've seen it run at around 60 frames per second, but if you want to set it to 40 FPS and lock it, you're going to have an incredible experience all around. So yeah, I can definitely see why Apex Legends is up there. And of course, PUBG, a little bit of a surprise, but it did go free to play recently, and it's still an incredibly popular game. So I can also see why that's up there. Either way, with consoles being so hard to find, it's really cool to see PC gaming getting more and more popular with people. And I really do feel like with a million Steam Decks out there in the world right now, that device is really pulling people into the world of PC gaming, because it really is a slippery slope situation, right? Like you get into it with the Steam Deck and then suddenly you're going to the store and buying a brand new gaming PC, or at least the parts to build one yourself, because you can transfer all your saves back and forth and use the same game that you bought on your Steam Deck on your new gaming PC that you can also plug into your TV and use a dual sensor Xbox controller with. It's really the best of all worlds, in my opinion at least. And next up, for those of you out there who are looking for more of our favorite game on the Steam Deck, which is buy a bunch of games, download them to your Steam Deck, start them, play them for 5 minutes, verify that they run extremely well, close them and never play them again, the Halloween sale starts tomorrow, and I obviously am a huge horror fan, as you can see from my Halloween Horror Nights t-shirt and all of my pins here with Michael Myers on them, and the Regan from The Exorcist and the Blair Witch Stickman. So I figured I'd give you some recommendations without prices, because unfortunately when I'm recording this video, the sale is not live, but I play a lot of horror games, so I can give you some to check out. First up, you have to check out The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2. I have verified that both of these games run extremely well on the Steam Deck. The Evil Within 1 is a top to bottom maxed out perfect 60 FPS experience. And if you're looking for a really cool middle ground between Resident Evil 4 and the original Resident Evil, you really can't beat this game. You literally have to light enemies on fire after you kill them with matches that are obviously super limited, or they'll come back to life and make your life hell later on in the level. And then the Evil Within 2, it doesn't quite run at 60 FPS, but you can definitely get a great 40 hertz, 40 FPS experience out of it. And it takes everything that made the first Evil Within great, cleans it up and makes it run and look a lot better, and then adds on top of it with one of the coolest things ever that I wish other survival horror games would do as well, which is they add in an open world hub world to the actual survival horror game. So between all of the story-based levels where you're getting those corridor sequences where you're being chased by giant terrifying Japanese monsters, you go back to this town called Union, which falls apart as the game continues on because the Evil Within takes place all within someone's mind. So as that mind breaks down, so does the town you're exploring. But you can get upgrades, you can fight mini bosses, they'll have mini bosses start showing up throughout the game, you can get new weapons, and it's just a really cool twist on the survival horror genre that I honestly don't think gets enough credit. And if you like Resident Evil 7 and Village, they did a free update for the Evil Within 2 that lets you also play it in first person. And as far as indie games go, there have actually been a lot of horror indie games that run well on the Steam Deck coming out this year. Cultic just came out, Cultic Episode 1. It's a boomer shooter for sure, so it's got like PS1, N64 era style pixelated animations and graphics, but the actual shooting feels extremely punchy and modern, so if you're into games like Dusk, I feel like this game is a no-brainer for you. And then Nightmare Reaper is a game that came out at early access this year. I absolutely love it. I think it's $25 normally, and it's basically if you took like a roguelite, a looter shooter, and a boomer shooter and mixed them all together, it looks and runs incredibly on the Steam Deck. And then if you want more of like an atmospheric sort of jump scary type horror game, Visage runs really well, and so does the new game Madison. And the last update I have for you guys today is that I just got another cool package from Jsaux. I've actually gotten two. They sent me this dock that lets you put an NVMe drive into it, which I'm gonna talk about in this video. And then in a future video, they also sent me the like gamer edition of their dock. And what I mean by that is that it comes with RGB lights, which is kind of interesting if you're into that stuff. But today we're focusing on this dock, the one that has the NVMe slot in it. And Jsaux was kind enough to also include a 2 terabyte drive with the dock, which you can actually purchase with this actual dock. I'm gonna call it the NVMe dock, but they call it the M2 dock, so it's a pick your poison there. It doesn't really matter all that much, but it does take different sizes of SSDs. So you can do a full-size one, you can do a 2230, as long as it has that little connector that all SSDs seem to use these days, you should be fine with this dock. Before I get into all the specs and stuff, we gotta talk about the pricing of this thing. So if you have an NVMe drive already that you're not using, you can get this dock for $129. Now, obviously, when you compare that to Jsaux's other dock, which is like 50 bucks, that's a pretty big increase, but you are getting a pretty cool feature with this as well. But if you also compare it to something like the official Steam Deck dock, which is $90, it doesn't really look like it's that much more at $130. Obviously, the difference is you also get a charger with the Steam Deck dock, which is nice to have an extra charger, but still, $130 for just the dock seems kind of fair for what it's doing. Now, there's also two other variations that come along with an SSD included, and the first one is a 1 terabyte for $200, and then you can get it with a 2 terabyte drive for $270. So as for which version of the dock you should buy, it gets a little tricky for a few reasons. If you guys didn't know, I have another channel called PS Ready, which is all about the PlayStation 5, and one of my favorite videos to make is this like bi-monthly SSD update where I tell you which ones are in the good speed range for what price. And a 2 terabyte SSD over on the PS5 side of things is always around $260 to $280. The difference is for the PlayStation 5, you need about 6,000 megabytes per second read and write speed to even use that thing with the PlayStation 5, which is way faster than what you're gonna get with this dock. Like even if you take one of those PS5 SSDs and put it in this dock maxes out at 900 megabytes per second read and write speed. So it's like nowhere near the speed of the PlayStation 5. Now, with that being said, I think I'm still gonna recommend just picking up the version of this that comes with the 2 terabyte drive because this thing is $130. The version of this thing that comes with the drive included is $270, but we went and looked and the drive that was included with this is selling MSRP for $200. So really, you can look at the math however you want. You could say, oh, I'm paying $130 for the dock and $140 for the SSD on top of it, which is like a $60 savings. So anyway you would slice it, it's a pretty good deal. The only way I would say buy the dock on its own is if you have a drive laying around already, obviously, or you've got an old laptop or something that you're not using anymore and it has a removable NVMe drive. And you're like, hey, this thing only supports 900 read and write anyway, so why not just use it in there? I think it's worth picking this thing up if you are going to buy it for the included drive price of $270. And now at this point in the video, we got to talk about why you'd even want to pick one of these up outside of the fact that it has a slot for an NVMe drive. So first of all, you've got 4 ports on this thing. You've got the 2 USB 3.1 ports, you've got an HDMI port, you've got a USB-C power delivery port, so that's going to supply power to your Steam Deck while you're using the dock. And then finally, you've got the gigabit Ethernet port. Now, just raw ports, if you compare that to the Steam Deck dock, you're of course losing one USB port. You're also losing a display port, which is a weird thing to say. And also the improvement that you're getting with it is that it's completely made of metal, which I think is pretty cool because the Steam Deck dock is plastic and it's honestly extremely light. Also, from a usability and just reliability standpoint, I have had zero problems with any Jsaux product I've ever used. I was using the non-pro version of their dock. They sent me the pro version later on. I used that for a long time and it was working great. And then I just upgraded to the official Steam Deck dock just because I like having that Steam Deck Valve logo right there on the thing, and it's just guaranteed to be compatible with the actual Steam Deck, right? Like, there's no real noticeable difference between the two docks is the point I'm trying to get at here. Now, at first glance, you would think the only reason you would want a dock like this is if you're playing your Steam Deck docked a lot, but for me personally, this thing could really come in handy if you're going to use the Steam Deck for a desktop PC environment. Like, a good example of how I could see myself using this dock is that I like listening to music on Apple Music. There's really not a good way to download Apple Music to your actual Steam Deck. You have to use an app called Cider, which visually looks incredible, but again, doesn't let you download your soundtracks, which is super irritating. So what I've done is I've gone and I've ripped all of these songs that I have in my main playlist, and they take up a lot of space on my actual Steam Deck. So what I would do is say, hey, the only time I really listen to music on my Steam Deck when I'm not connected to the internet is when this thing is docked. So I would store all of those songs on the dock and they'd be right there ready to play when my Steam Deck is in desktop mode. Also, if you're going to have your Steam Deck docked at a TV and you're someone who likes playing movies off Plex, or you rip all your movies off your Blu-rays, or you just download them online, you could leave all of your movies just automatically stored on the dock. So when you want to watch movies on your Steam Deck, you drop it on the dock, it powers the dock, and all of the movies are stored right there, and you can play them right on your TV from your Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck does a really good job when you connect it to pretty much any external monitor out there. And also, if the Steam Deck is your only gaming device and you like playing games on the TV, like the one I mentioned earlier in the video, which is Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition, or you like playing games like Apex Legends with a keyboard and mouse, or you like having indie games like Cult of the Lamb played on a big screen, those are games you could say, hey, I'm gonna leave these on the actual NVMe drive on the dock and then use my SD card and the internal storage on my Steam Deck for smaller games that I like taking on the go. So while the official Steam Deck dock, the Pro dock from Jsaux, those are docks made for every Steam Deck user. They're kind of like a jack of all trades sort of situation. This is a dock with a specific user in mind. And when you look at this, their Pro dock, their base dock, the RGB dock, Jsaux is really out here trying to make a dock for everyone. And I think that's a really commendable thing they're doing. So yeah, if you want to pick one of these up for yourself, I will have it linked down in the description. And for what it's worth, my ultimate recommendation is the full 2 terabyte version because it's kind of like the best bang for your buck.